So today I'd like to reflect with you a bit about Easter and the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was born in the 19th century to Christian parents. His dad was a Lutheran pastor, and Nietzsche grew up a very pious Christian. And then something happened. He had this kind of anti-conversion experience, if you will, into believing that this idea of God is harmful for humanity, that God doesn't exist, and that we would be better off if we just did away with this idea of God. He writes in his book, The Antichrist, "We regard what has been revered as God not as divine, but as wretched, absurd, pernicious, not as an error, but as a crime against life. We deny that God is God. If the existence of the Christian God were proved to us, we should feel even less able to believe in him. A religion such as Christianity, which never once comes into touch with reality, must naturally be a mortal enemy." Nietzsche is against this vengeful image of God that he sees in the Christian tradition. Nietzsche writes about God, "How he raged at us, this wrath monster." Nietzsche compares God to a potter, saying that God took revenge on his pots and creations. However, because they turned out so badly. Away with such a God! Better to have no God. Better to set up destiny on one's own account. Better to be a fool. Better to be God oneself. Nietzsche states that the most important fact in recent history is that God is dead. That belief in the Christian God has become unworthy of professing. What I love about Nietzsche is that he's struggling with this idea of God. He takes it seriously. And this is also what I love about Christopher Hitchens, is that he takes this idea of God seriously. I mean, Nietzsche is the Hitchens before Christopher Hitchens, right? I mean, they're both struggling with the same thing, and they both come to the same conclusions, and they both give the same evidence that this God isn't worth believing in because the Christian God is wrathful. But I think that might be a misunderstanding of the Christian God. I mean, especially from Good Friday to Easter and beyond, we see that Jesus, the Christian God, is transforming the human understanding of who God is, right? So on Good Friday, when Jesus hangs on this cross that we erected for him, human beings erected for him, Jesus is up there and he doesn't pray for revenge. He prays for forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. When Nietzsche says that Christianity never once comes into touch with reality, I think he's missing this moment. Because the reality is that human beings are violent. And whenever we become violent, we will end up killing the things that are most important to us, even God. And here we see this transformation of God into this God of forgiveness. With the resurrection of Jesus, he comes back. The resurrection of the Christian God comes back to his disciples, and his disciples see them and they're afraid. Because Nietzsche is right, every other God in human history has been tied into revenge, vengeance. And this Christian God, this resurrected Jesus, says, that's not who God is. Forgive. I forgive you. Go and spread this good news of God's forgiveness to others. Participate within this good news with others. Love one another as I have loved you. This is what the Christian God is all about. I mean, the fascinating thing about Nietzsche's 19th century declaration that God is dead, the Christian God is dead, is that 1900 years before, we already killed him. And he forgave. The resurrection is about the truth of the forgiveness and the love of God, that even when we kill the Christian understanding of who God is, God comes back and says, I forgive you. I love you. Participate within that forgiveness. Share that forgiveness and love with one another. Those are my reflections on Nietzsche and Easter. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Bye-bye.